If you lose your calm, you've already lost the fight. If they can trigger you, they can control you. Confrontation isn't always physical, but it always reveals who's truly in command, not of the room, but of themselves. Most people go into conflict emotionally exposed. They raise their voice thinking it shows strength. They react fast, thinking it proves dominance. But every time you let emotion lead, you become predictable, vulnerable, weak. That's not control. That's surrender dressed as pride. This video gives you a new lens, a method forged from two worlds: the unmatched composure of Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest samurai strategist in history, and the mental armor of Stoic philosophy. These are not ancient relics. They are blueprints for modern confrontation. Musashi's mind was his deadliest weapon. The Stoics trained for clarity in chaos. Combine them, and you get something rare: cold awareness in hot moments. This is not about being passive. It's about being prepared. It's about becoming the kind of person who can walk into conflict and stay absolutely still on the inside. When the room shakes, your foundation holds. If you've ever walked away from a confrontation thinking, "Why did I say that? Why did I lose it?" Zrение – это для вас. The tools ahead will help you build something stronger than a sharp tongue: unshakable control. At Victory Stoic, we cut through the noise. If this speaks to you, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. More importantly, drop a comment below with your personal code, a line you live by when pressure hits. One sentence, one rule, one signal to stay sharp. Let's get into the real mechanics of calm and how to weaponize it. Number 1. The one who loses their temper is already being controlled. Every time you lose your temper, someone else takes the wheel. Whether it's your boss, a stranger on the freeway, your partner, or a keyboard warrior on social media, they win the moment you snap. Not because they're stronger, but because you handed over control. The Stoic philosopher Gaius Musonius Rufus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Anger is a leash, and the one holding it is often the one you least respect. That's the paradox. The very people you feel superior to, annoying coworkers, petty critics, manipulative family, become your puppeteers the second you react. You dance to their tune, and the worst part? You think you're in control because you're louder. Miyamoto Musashi, Japan's undefeated sword saint, wrote in The Book of Five Rings, "The angry man will defeat himself in battle, as well as in life." This wasn't poetic metaphor. He meant it literally. In a duel, anger blinds you. It narrows your field of vision, shortens your breath, makes your hand sloppy. Off the battlefield, it does the same. You send that text you regret. You raise your voice and lose credibility. You storm out and look weak. You escalate what you could have owned. Modern psychology backs this up. In a 2008 study published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, researchers found that individuals experiencing high emotional arousal were significantly more likely to make impulsive, irrational decisions. Anger activates the amygdala, the brain's fear and threat center, while suppressing the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for judgment and long-term thinking. In other words, you literally lose access to your ability to think straight when you let anger take the reins. Think about Scott, a regional manager in his late 40s from Ohio. Good at his job, respected by his team, until one meeting where a younger colleague, eager to impress, openly challenged his strategy. Instead of pausing, Scott snapped. He raised his voice, went off script, turned the meeting into a power struggle. That single outburst undermined months of leadership. His team lost some trust. The young guy? He didn't win the argument, but he won the moment, because Scott gave him the power. This happens everywhere. The guy yelling in traffic, controlled by a stranger he'll never meet again. The father shouting at his teenager, letting a 16-year-old drive his emotions. The executive losing composure on a conference call, becoming a liability in the eyes of the board. The Stoics believed that emotions were signals, not commands. Epictetus taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That's not a call to suppress. It's a call to step back, to observe, to pause and choose, not just feel and fire. So how do you build that kind of pause? One simple, powerful habit. Label your emotion the moment you feel it rise. Neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman at UCLA conducted fMRI studies showing that when people name their emotions, I'm feeling angry, instead of just reacting, they reduce amygdala activity and activate the brain's control centers. The act of labeling creates psychological distance. It breaks the spell. Here's how you use it. The next time someone says something that hits a nerve, don't fire back. In your mind, or quietly under your breath, say, I'm feeling attacked, or this is frustration showing up. That tiny act of naming does two things. It re-engages your rational brain and buys you a critical second. And that second is everything. That's where you choose to lead instead of explode. Another practical tool, visual disassociation. Imagine yourself on a balcony looking down at the situation like a movie scene. You're the director, not the actor. This mental shift detaches you from the heat and lets you observe without reacting. It's something elite performers use, from military leaders to high-stakes negotiators. They train themselves to see the moment before stepping into it emotionally. Musashi practiced this in his own way. Before every duel, he stood still, observing, breathing, not letting his opponent's movements or words dictate his state. His victories came not from rage or rush, but from waiting for the exact moment when his opponent lost control. That's when he struck. We're not swinging swords today, but the principle applies. The person who stays calm during conflict sees more, sees the other person's insecurity, their overreaction, their intent, and by staying calm, you become immune to their manipulation. You're no longer reacting, you're choosing. That's the only real power. Make no mistake, being calm is not being passive, it's being strategic. The hothead might feel powerful, but they're being played. They're easy to predict, easy to provoke, easy to beat. The calm person, they're dangerous, because you don't know what they're thinking. You can't knock them off center. They don't react on cue. Start practicing today. No fancy setup, no special gear, just one habit. Notice and name. I feel angry. I feel triggered. I feel like proving myself. Say it to yourself, not out loud. Then breathe, reset, respond. Not to them, but according to your principles, according to your code. Because when you own your emotion, no one else can. When you hold the reins, no one rides you. And when your calm becomes unshakable, confrontation is no longer a threat. It becomes your arena. Number 2, anticipate the hit before it lands. The worst punch is the one you didn't see coming. It's not just the force, it's the shock. The same goes for every confrontation in life. Whether it's a sudden insult, a betrayal, or a public challenge, the pain hits harder when your mind wasn't ready. That's why you lose your cool. Not because it's too much, but because it's unexpected. Miyamoto Musashi didn't step into battle hoping for calm seas. He walked in expecting chaos. He studied every possible move his opponents might make. not just their swordplay, but their mind. He wrote, "Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye." That means see ahead, not just around you. In other words, if you're shocked, you're unprepared. And if you're unprepared, you're already in danger. The Stoics had a name for this kind of mental training: premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Before the day began, Marcus Aurelius would remind himself that he would face selfish people, liars, ego-driven fools, not because he was cynical, but because he was sane, and because being prepared turned frustration into focus. He wasn't caught off guard. He was ready to meet life as it was, not as he wished it would be. The modern mind resists this. We're told to think positive, visualize success. But that's only half the picture. The Stoic prepares for the storm and sails forward anyway. That's real resilience, expecting resistance, but refusing to break. Consider Amanda, a nurse supervisor in a high-stress ER in Chicago. Every day brought the potential for chaos: angry families, short-staffed shifts, system failures. She started practicing premeditatio malorum without even realizing it. Each morning before walking in, she'd mentally rehearse the worst things that could happen: a combative patient, a sudden equipment outage, a mistake from a rookie nurse. Not to dwell, but to rehearse. So when the chaos came, she didn't flinch. She moved fast, stayed focused, and led under pressure. Her calm wasn't genetic, it was practiced. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. There's a critical difference. Pessimism expects failure and freezes. Stoic preparation accepts difficulty and sharpens. If you expect confrontation, you don't get rattled when it arrives. You're already in the fight, on your terms. Psychologist Dr. Stephen Hayes, founder of Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, ACT, notes that humans suffer more from their avoidance of discomfort than the discomfort itself. When you visualize difficulty ahead of time, you shrink its power. You normalize the stress response. You reduce the cortisol spike. In neuroscience, this is called exposure rehearsal. The brain experiences something before it happens, so when it does, it's no longer a shock. You can apply this daily in a simple, concrete way. Every morning, before you check your phone, close your eyes for 2 minutes. Imagine the 3 most likely problems that could throw you off today. A conflict with your partner, a disrespectful coworker, a frustrating delay. Picture it, hear it, feel the emotion it brings. Then ask yourself, if that happens, how do I want to respond? Decide in advance. That's your mental armor. Musashi would mentally simulate entire duels before stepping onto the field. His victories began hours before the blade was drawn. You can do the same with the battles in your world. Boardrooms, break rooms, family dinners, courtroom showdowns, or just a hard talk with someone you love. The beauty of this habit is that it builds confidence without arrogance. You're not pretending nothing will go wrong. You're not clinging to best-case fantasies. You're walking in eyes wide open and calm. Because once you've seen the hit in your mind, it can't break you in reality. Once you've accepted that problems will come, you're no longer fragile. You don't need everything to go your way. You only need to be ready when it doesn't. True calm doesn't come from hoping everything works out. It comes from knowing you can hold the line when it doesn't. That's what Stoicism teaches. That's what Musashi embodied. And that's what you can start building right now, with 2 minutes of mental rehearsal every morning before the world throws its first punch. Number 3, don't say the last word. The last word is a drug. It feels like dominance, like closure, like you're walking away having won. But in reality, It's often just ego dressed up as strategy, and it almost always makes things worse. In every heated argument, there comes that moment when you know you could say one more thing. That one line that cuts deep, that closes the door, that puts them in their place. You feel it bubbling at the edge of your tongue, and that's exactly when you need to shut your mouth. Because the last word is rarely the smartest word. It's the one most likely to burn bridges, escalate tension, and stain your character long after the conversation ends. That one final jab, it doesn't make you stronger. It makes you reckless. The Stoic philosopher Seneca warned, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." Silence isn't weakness, it's control. In a world obsessed with having the final say, the ability to hold back is power. Take James, a contractor from Pennsylvania in his early 50s. Tough guy, built his business from nothing. One day, a client disrespected him in front of the crew, questioned his pricing, his integrity. James felt the fire rise. He had a dozen sharp comebacks lined up. He could have humiliated the guy on the spot. Instead, he paused. He said nothing. He let the man finish, nodded once, and walked away. Later, that client called back, not to insult, but to apologize and continue the job. James didn't lose control. He earned respect. Now imagine if he'd said that last word. That deal would be gone. His crew would have seen weakness disguised as anger, and deep down, he would have known he slipped. That's the danger of the last word. It's almost never for them. It's for you, to satisfy a craving for emotional release. But what feels good for 3 seconds often causes regret for 3 weeks, or ruins something permanently. There's also science behind this. Research in interpersonal communication shows that most escalation in arguments stems not from the core disagreement, but from how people respond in the final turns of the exchange. Dr. John Gottman, a leading psychologist on conflict resolution, describes harsh startups and toxic enders as key predictors of broken relationships. The last word often carries the most emotional weight, and therefore, the highest risk of causing lasting damage. And yet we chase it. Why? Because we confuse silence with defeat. We think not speaking means giving in. But in truth, holding back when you could say more is one of the highest expressions of strength. You control the temperature. You set the tone. You walk away with your peace intact. Miyamoto Musashi embodied this restraint. He didn't trash talk his opponents. He didn't gloat after a victory. He didn't need to. His silence said more than words could. When asked about strategy, he said, "Do nothing that is of no use." Most last words are useless at best, destructive at worst. If the goal is to lead, influence, or protect your dignity, silence is often the sharpest blade. It disarms. It creates space. It forces the other person to sit with their own behavior. When you stop engaging, they start reflecting. When you hold your line without firing a final shot, they don't see weakness. They see composure, and they feel the contrast. So how do you apply this in real life? Simple rule. When your mind screams, say one more thing, do the opposite. Count to 5. Ask yourself, will this help or just satisfy my pride? If the answer is pride, you're about to lose, even if you win. Another tip, write the last word down instead of saying it. Let it out on paper, not in the moment. You'll get the release, but you'll also get the clarity that comes from distance. Most of the time, when you read it back later, you'll be glad you kept it to yourself. The discipline to not speak is harder than letting loose, but it's also what separates those who react from those who lead. The world is full of loud people saying too much. Be the one who doesn't need to. Not because you're afraid, but because you've already won the only battle that matters, the one inside. In every confrontation, know this: saying less leaves you more in control. Saying nothing when you could say something is often the strongest move you'll ever make. Number 4. Step back to see the whole field. Most people think power comes from pressing forward, speaking first, striking fast, taking up space. But Miyamoto Musashi, the most feared swordsman in Japanese history, rarely struck first. He waited, he watched, he stepped back, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Distance gave him clarity, patience gave him precision. That's why he never lost. In confrontation, most people charge in with emotion. They want to be right, to be heard, to win. So they speak too soon, act too fast, and miss what's really going on. They react to the surface and lose sight of the structure. But the one who steps back, the one who holds the moment instead of rushing it, sees the entire game. And that person wins without trying to. This principle applies far beyond the battlefield. In modern life, taking a step back, physically, mentally, emotionally, is what gives you the edge. When you remove yourself from the heat, you regain perspective. You stop reacting to the noise and start reading the pattern. You stop getting pulled into ego battles and start playing on your terms. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You always own the option of having no opinion." That wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Sometimes, the strongest move isn't to speak up, it's to observe, wait, and understand the whole picture before engaging. Think of Darren, a senior sales executive in Texas. During a high-stakes negotiation, the opposing team threw in a surprise demand mid-meeting. His junior partner panicked and wanted to push back immediately. But Darren raised his hand, asked for a 10-minute break, and stepped outside. He didn't use the time to vent. He used it to walk around the building, clear his head, replay the conversation, and ask one question: what are they really after? That short pause revealed a deeper play: control, not cost. He came back in, made a strategic concession that looked generous but cost nothing, and closed the deal on his terms. That's the power of stepping back. Neurologically, this act creates real change. When you remove yourself, literally or mentally, from a stressor, you interrupt the amygdala's threat response and allow the prefrontal cortex to regain control. In other words, you calm the alarm system and bring logic back online. Distance doesn't just give perspective, it restores your ability to lead yourself. A practical way to apply this: when a confrontation rises, don't rush to fill the silence. Take one full breath, then take a literal step back if needed. Lean back in your chair, pause your walk, even excuse yourself for a minute. That single movement signals your body that you are not being chased, that you are choosing, and that shifts your mindset from defensive to deliberate. Musashi used to fight by reading patterns, footwork, rhythm, intention. He could only do that because he didn't rush in. He gave himself the vantage point, the high ground. You can do the same in meetings, arguments, parenting, leadership. Anywhere power seems to depend on speed, but really belongs to patience. This doesn't mean retreat, it means recalibrate. You're not running from the moment, you're positioning yourself to own it. You're refusing to get dragged into chaos before you understand the terrain. And that's exactly what separates the reactive from the composed, the emotional from the strategic, the weak from the dangerous. Train this daily. Practice the pause before response. In emails, Wait 5 minutes before replying to anything that triggers you. In conversation, let others talk first and fully. In thought, before you judge or label, ask, what am I missing from this angle? That small habit builds a powerful mindset, the ability to zoom out before zooming in. Because control is not about being loud, it's about being clear. And clarity always comes to the one who steps back before stepping in. Number 5, create emotional distance before you engage. Confrontation doesn't begin with words, it begins with sensation. The moment someone challenges you, your body reacts before your mind even catches up. Your chest tightens, your breath shortens, your thoughts start racing, clouding your judgment. That's not you thinking. That's biology hijacking your system. This is where most people lose, not in what they say, but in how fast they say it. They speak from heat, not from clarity. And once that happens, the damage is done. Miyamoto Musashi understood this better than anyone. For him, the real fight wasn't with the blade, it was with himself. He wrote in Dokudo, "Do not let yourself be guided by the feeling of lust or love." He didn't mean to suppress emotions, he meant to separate from them, to see them without becoming them. Modern Stoicism echoes this exact approach. When you say, "I'm angry," you become the anger. But when you shift to, "I'm feeling anger," everything changes. That small tweak in language creates psychological space between you and the emotion. You become the observer, not the slave. It's no longer your identity. It's an experience moving through you. Psychologist Dr. Dan Siegel calls this technique, "name it to tame it." Neuroscience shows that when we label an emotion, especially in the middle of intensity, we reduce the amygdala's grip and re-engage the brain's logical centers. It's like hitting the brakes on a speeding car. The emotion doesn't vanish, but it no longer controls the wheel. Let's look at Eric, a firefighter from North Carolina. Calm under pressure, fearless on the job. But at home, different story. One night, his teenage son mouthed off during dinner. Eric felt that hot wave rise, the urge to slam his hand on the table, shout, assert dominance. But instead, he stood up, walked to the sink, ran cold water, and repeated to himself, "This is anger, not war." It gave him 5 seconds of space, just enough to see the moment, not just be in it. He returned, calm. The conversation shifted. His relationship stayed intact. That's emotional distance in action. So how do you train this? Start with language. Every time you feel a surge, anger, jealousy, panic, mentally label it. I'm feeling tightness. I'm noticing frustration. Speak to yourself like a witness, not a judge. It sounds small, but that shift is massive. It stops the spiral before it starts. Add a physical cue. Musashi had his ritual, stillness before battle. You can adopt your own. When triggered, drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw. Take one full breath, slow and controlled. The body leads the mind. When you calm the body, you create space for choice. In conflict, the real enemy isn't the other person. It's your uncontrolled response. And the best warriors don't fight harder. They feel slower. They let the emotion rise like a wave, but they don't jump in. They wait. Watch. Let it pass. Then act from principle, not pressure. Emotional distance doesn't mean emotional numbness. It means mastery. You feel everything, but choose your reaction. That's what separates a stoic, or a swordsman, from the average person. Because in any confrontation, your greatest weapon isn't your voice, your stance, or your argument. It's your ability to pause and say, "This is emotion. I see it, but I don't have to be it." That moment of space, That's where power lives. Number 6. Control the breath. Control the battle. When confrontation hits, your breath betrays you. It shortens, it quickens, it rises to the chest and abandons the belly. Most people don't notice this shift, but the body does. It interprets shallow, rapid breathing as a signal. Threat detected. The nervous system floods with cortisol, focus narrows, and clarity vanishes. You're no longer thinking, you're surviving. This is why people say things they don't mean in the heat of conflict. Why hands tremble, voices crack, and logic collapses. The mind follows the breath. If you can't control one, you lose both. Miyamoto Musashi mastered this link. He didn't just train with the sword, he trained with the lungs. Before and during combat, he used breath to command his state. While others tightened up with fear or rage, Musashi's breath stayed low, steady, deliberate. This gave him time. It gave him calm. It gave him the space to wait until his opponent revealed a weakness. And only then did he strike. The technique he followed was simple. Inhale through the nose for 4 seconds. Hold gently for a beat. Then exhale through the mouth for 6. This 4 to 6 rhythm calms the autonomic nervous system, shifting you from fight or flight to rest and focus. It's not mystical, it's physiological. Modern science backs this completely. Dr. Patricia Gerbard and Dr. Richard Brown, clinical psychiatrists and breathwork researchers, have shown that controlled breathing patterns, especially elongated exhales, can reduce anxiety, lower heart rate, and improve cognitive clarity within minutes. It's used by military snipers, hostage negotiators, and elite athletes under pressure. Why? Because nothing sharpens the mind like oxygen delivered with control. You can practice this anytime, but especially before or during stressful encounters. Someone's pressing your buttons? Inhale for 4. Hold. Exhale for 6. Just one cycle can shift your state. 3 can reset the conversation entirely. Picture Nicole, a restaurant manager in Denver. On a Saturday night, understaffed and overwhelmed, a customer began yelling over a late order. She felt the panic rising. Her usual response? Snapping, just to shut it down. But that night, she remembered the breath. While listening, she silently cycled through the 4 to 6 pattern. Her tone softened. Her words slowed. The customer de-escalated, not because Nicole became submissive, but because she didn't mirror the chaos. Her breath kept her anchored. This is the difference between reaction and command. Most people try to stay calm through willpower alone, but the breath gives you a lever. It's always with you, and it always works if you choose to use it. Here's a practical way to train it. Once a day, sit or stand still for 2 minutes. Close your mouth. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold for 1. Exhale through your mouth for 6. Repeat for 5 cycles. Do this when things are calm, so it's second nature when things aren't. The more often you practice, the faster your body will default to this rhythm under stress. Musashi didn't win because he had better reflexes. He won because he had better rhythm, internal rhythm. His breath was his anchor, his edge, his center of gravity in chaos. Control of the breath is control of the self. And in any confrontation, that's the difference between losing your head and keeping it. So when the pressure rises, don't clench, don't shout, don't rush. Just breathe, strategically, deliberately, like a warrior. Because in a world full of noise and reaction, the one who owns their breath owns the room. Number 7, purposeful action beats emotional reaction. Every conflict is a fork in the road. One path is emotion, fast, loud, impulsive. The other is purpose, Measured, strategic, controlled. Most people take the first. They act out of pride, out of anger, out of fear, and they pay for it later. But those who train themselves to choose the second path, those who act with intention, win without wasting energy, because action without purpose is just reaction, and reaction is easy to manipulate. Miyamoto Musashi saw this clearly. His opponents were often strong, skilled, even ruthless, but they were predictable. Why? Because they acted from emotion. They fought to defend their ego, to prove their worth, to silence insult. Musashi didn't. He fought with a purpose, not for revenge, not for pride, but to survive, to dominate, and to evolve. Before each duel, he asked himself a question few fighters had the clarity to consider. What outcome serves my long-term goal? That single question separated him from every man who died at his feet. This same principle applies to your life. At work, in relationships, in arguments, in negotiations. When you enter a confrontation, you're stepping into a moment of pressure. And in pressure, most people default to emotion. They want to be right. They want to win. They want to release the internal heat. But emotion without direction leads to damage. It feels good in the moment. It costs you after. The Stoics warned about this trap for centuries. Seneca wrote, "No man was ever wise by chance. Wisdom requires intention. Before you speak, before you move, ask, what am I really trying to achieve here?" That pause is not weakness, it's precision. It gives you power not just over others, but over yourself. Take Kevin, a regional operations director in his mid-40s from Arizona. One Monday morning, he walks into a meeting to find that one of his junior managers had bypassed him on a critical decision. He feels disrespected, undermined, triggered. His first instinct? Confront the guy hard in front of the team, reassert authority, prove a point. But right before speaking, Kevin remembers his long game. Build a high-functioning team, not break one. So he pauses, writes down what he wants to say and what he should say. Then he decides to meet one-on-one after the meeting. Calm, direct, professional. The result? A real conversation, a stronger relationship, no damage, total control. That's purposeful action. This doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean backing down. It means knowing exactly why you act and choosing the when and how with precision. You can still confront, still assert, still challenge, but you do it on your terms, with your mind in the lead, not your ego. The psychology behind this is crystal clear. Studies in decision-making under stress, like those published in the Journal of Behavioral Decision-Making, show that people who reflect on long-term goals before engaging in high-pressure moments are far more likely to make effective, rational choices. Their emotional intensity drops, their clarity increases, and they recover faster, regardless of the outcome. That's not just mental theory, it's battlefield application. When your actions serve something bigger than your feelings, you become unshakable. You're not trying to win the argument, you're trying to win the war. And that war isn't with the other person, it's with the version of you that wants to lash out and lose control. Purpose shrinks the ego. It puts emotions in context. That person cutting you off in traffic, not worth your peace. That client pushing your buttons, not worth the contract. That partner hitting you below the belt, not worth the long-term damage. You don't avoid conflict. You rise above petty ones so you can own the ones that matter. Here's a habit to sharpen this skill. Before any meeting, difficult conversation, or high-stakes situation, write down your answer to one question. What result do I want from this? Not what you want to feel. Not what you want them to feel, but the actual outcome. Write it. Say it to yourself. Then act only in alignment with that goal. If your words or tone or move won't get you closer to it, cut it. Musashi didn't swing because he was angry. He swung when the moment was right. He didn't fight because he was insulted. He fought to win, and only when necessary. That's why he lived. That's why he became a legend. His clarity of purpose made him unpredictable, calm, and unstoppable. So the next time someone tries to pull you into their emotional chaos, don't take the bait. Ask yourself, what outcome matters? And act for that. Only that. You'll be slower to speak, sharper when you do, and every move will count. Because when your actions serve a higher purpose, your opponents can't reach you. They don't know your target, but you do. And that makes you lethal. Conclusion: calm isn't weakness, it's domination. The greatest confrontation is never with the person in front of you. It's with the fire inside you. The urge to lash out, to prove a point, to let emotion take the wheel. But the moment you give in to that impulse, you've already lost control. And worse, you've handed it to someone else. Reactivity is weakness in disguise. It makes you easy to read, easy to provoke, easy to manipulate. The ones who stay calm aren't passive. They're powerful. They're the ones leading the room, not following the noise. Musashi didn't flinch in front of swords because he had mastered his blade. He didn't flinch because he had mastered himself. The Stoics taught the same. Don't be ruled by insult, pressure, or chaos. Build your mind into a fortress. Be unshakable, not because nothing can reach you, but because nothing can move you without your permission. When others yell, you observe. When they try to provoke, you remain still. Not because you're afraid to act, but because you choose when and how. You don't need to prove anything in the moment. You already won when you stayed in command. That's not just victory, it's dominance. Now the question is, will you use what you've learned here? Not tomorrow, not when life is perfect, but in your next confrontation, the next sharp comment, the next emotional jab, the next power play that tries to throw you off balance. That moment is your test, and you're ready. If this video hit home, support the mission. Like the video. Share it with someone who needs to stop losing their power in moments that matter. Subscribe to Victory Stoic for more direct tactical content like this. And most importantly, comment below. Drop your command code, the mindset you use when the pressure rises, or share a story, a time when you either lost your calm or held the line. Thanks for listening. Now go walk into the world like a fortress.